You have encouraged the civilians in the eastern part of Aleppo and also actually the rebels to leave the place. Yeah. You wanted to create a humanitarian corridor. Can you guarantee the safety of those civilians and the rebels if they leave the rebel-held part of the city?
Exactly. That's what we announced a few days ago. And we announced it 2 months ago because we wanted the civilian to leave away from the terrorists.
And how are you going to protect them?
They are allowed to leave. It happened many times in many different areas in Syria. We allowed the terrorists to leave that area in order to protect the civilians. We don't need any more bloodletting and bloodshedding. This is one of the ways or the methods we've been using in order to protect the civilians. Of course, if they don't obey, we tell the civilians that we're going to attack that area so they can move away from it. But the best way is to allow the terrorists to leave and the civilian will be safe. Then you can, if you want to follow or chase the terrorists, you can chase them somewhere else where there's no civilians.
Do you understand if people around the world who are watching these terrifying pictures coming out of the eastern part of Aleppo, if they maybe think that you are denying facts, that you also have some kind of responsibility for the victims, for the bombing of the hospitals, for the bombing of the civilian infrastructure? Do you understand that some people, they may think you are denying facts?
Yeah, look, if we've been faced by lies since the beginning of the war on Syria, accepting those lies as reality doesn't make me credible. It's not mean to, I wouldn't be credible if I say, oh yeah, you're right. That's why I said, there's difference between accepting policy, that this is a policy, or accepting that they always have mistakes. I didn't deny any mistake to be committed by any individual. I said there's always mistake. There are always mistakes committed in any war. So I'm very realistic. But to say that this is our aim as a government, we give the order to destroy hospitals or schools or to kill civilians, this is against our interest. I mean, if you want to put the morals aside, we wouldn't do it because this is against us. So how can those people that would say that we are only denying facts, can they convince anyone that we are working against our interest? This is first. Second, if we are killing people, Syrian people, and destroying hospitals and doing all this, committing all these atrocities, and we've been faced by all the great power and the petrodollar in the world, how can I be president after nearly 6 years of the beginning of the war? I'm not Superman. If I don't have support, I wouldn't be here. And because I have the support, and because we defend the Syrian people, we have the support as president or as a government. This is how to refute all these claims. I mean, at the end, the reality is telling.
So there is a fierce battle going on in Aleppo right now. What will be the Syrian army and the Russian army's next move to retake the eastern rebel-held part of Aleppo?
To continue the fight with the rebels till they leave Aleppo. They have to. There's no other options. We won't accept that terrorists will take control of any part of Syria, not only Aleppo. This is our mission, and this is our goal, and this is our next step.
So this intense way of warfare that we see right now will continue, that's what you're saying?
No, if you have any other option, like the reconciliations in other areas, that's the best option, not the war. And that's why we announced, we gave many amnesties to hundreds, and maybe thousands, not hundreds, to thousands of militants in order to save blood, and it worked. That's why we said we give them guarantee whether they want to have reconciliation and to have the amnesty, or to live with their armaments outside the city of Aleppo completely, to leave the city safe and to go back to its, for the people to go back to their normal life.
The United States, they stopped all bilateral talks with Russia about any kind of peace agreement. And the Russians, they said that they actually regret this. Do you regret it as well?
We regret it, but we knew in advance that it wouldn't work, because the agreement is not only about the talk between the two great powers. It's not about what they're going to sign or agree upon. It's about the will. And we already knew, we had already known that the Americans didn't have the will to reach any agreement, because the main part of that agreement is to attack al-Nusra, which is, according to the American list and to the United Nations list, is a terrorist group. But in the Syrian conflict, it's American card. Without the al-Nusra, the American cannot have any real, let's say, and concrete and effective card in the Syrian arena. That's why we regret it, but we already knew that it wouldn't happen.
But isn't it very difficult for the United States to separate the so-called moderate rebels and some of the more radical rebels? Isn't it very difficult when you are attacking the moderate rebels all the time?
You are right. Do you know why you are right? Do you know the unicorn animal that, like horse, has a long horn? It's myth. And the moderate opposition is myth. That's why you cannot separate something that doesn't exist from something that exists. All of them have the same grassroots. The same grassroots used to be called Free Syrian Army 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Then it became al-Nusra, then it became ISIS. So the same grassroots move from group to another group. That's why they cannot separate it, and they don't want. If this is reality, not a myth, they don't want, but they cannot because it doesn't exist.
But why did you ask them to do it if it's not possible?
Because they insisted that there is a moderate opposition, and the Russians told them, okay, if there is a moderate opposition, please separate those moderates from the extremists, and they didn't work because they don't exist. That's why.
What do you think will be the consequences of the US suspension of the bilateral talks? I mean, until now, the Syrian and Russian army, they have avoided direct clashes with the US army.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's an increased risk of direct attacks between you and your allies and the US army?
Many people are talking about the escalation if it didn't work or if it's not implemented, I mean the agreement. But actually that escalation has been happening for a while now. I mean, before that agreement, let's say, failed, the American attacked our forces in Deir ez-Zor, and everybody knows that only one group existed in Deir ez-Zor, which is ISIS, and ISIS came and took the place of the Syrian army, and they threatened the city, which is called Deir ez-Zor, because of the American attacks. So talking about the escalation is already happening. Talking about direct confrontation, I mean, since the World War II, that never happened. I mean, it was very close to happen during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, I think. Now, the situation is different because in the United States, you don't have superior statecraft. When you don't have superior statecraft, you should expect anything, and you should always expect the worst. I'm sure that Russia is doing its best not to reach that point. But do the American, or do, let's say, the hawk parts or the group within the administration do their best to avoid that confrontation, or the opposite, do their best to have this confrontation with Russia? That's what worries us.
And talking about the incident in Deir ez-Zor on September 17, it was British, Australian, US and Danish fighter jets who allegedly attacked the Syrian army. Denmark, like the other countries, they said it was a mistake. Do you accept that explanation?
We accept the explanation, but that doesn't mean we accept that error. It doesn't mean we justify it. To say a mistake, maybe you have the wrong information, especially as you are fulfilling American mission. I'm sure not the Danish, not the British decided which target they should attack. I'm sure the Americans said this is our target, and this is where ISIS, of course, they deceive the others and tell them we're going to attack ISIS. Maybe that's the truth. But is it acceptable for the Danish people that your army is fulfilling military missions of other countries without verifying the target and knowing where is it heading? Do you take a bus without knowing where the bus is going to? You don't. So it's not acceptable. Maybe it's a mistake, that's true, but the mistake is not acceptable.
So do you think that indirectly Denmark, they were helping ISIS?
In reality, they helped ISIS because of this attack, because they killed tens of Syrian soldiers who were defending the city of Deir ez-Zor from being under the control of ISIS, and now ISIS took that hills that overlooked the city, so they could be able someday to take control of Deir ez-Zor because of that attack.
And you think that the US, they did that on purpose, and Denmark, they helped them without knowing?
I don't know about Denmark. I don't know if it's without knowing. Maybe, but the only reason that make me believe so, because the European implement and fulfill what the Americans do in every field without asking and without discussing, to be frank. So it could be one of the reasons. But for the Americans, they 100% did it intentionally, because ISIS gathered their militants in the same place before they attacked. And when the attack started, it took about 1 hour. And the next hour, ISIS attacked and took control of those hills. How could ISIS knew about this raid before it happened? Of course, this is not the only indication for us that the United States is supporting ISIS. The attack on Palmyra, when they occupied and took control of Palmyra under the supervision of the Americans, the smuggling of oil, the extraction of oil from oil fields in Syria, in the desert, in the middle of the day. This is a good, strong indication that the United States has been supporting ISIS in order to use ISIS.